Well, I appreciate Mr. Romney making his comments. The commitment here is to make sure that you don't cut education resources. Because while you got great principal accountability, you got to make sure you got the resources to keep doing what you got to do. And he has a lot of other types of things that he wants to do, like tax cuts for the most fortunate. That means there's going to be tremendous cuts in education. And those aren't the right choices.
Well, that's Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel saying thanks but no thanks to Mitt Romney, who released a statement siding with the mayor against the striking Chicago teachers unions. And as you listen to Mayor Emanuel, you would think things are just boffo in Chicago, that the students are doing great, education is flourishing, public education is a shining jewel in the Midwest. No public word, by the way, from President Obama, but that really isn't that surprising because the president doesn't want to upset the teachers' unions. But someone better upset those unions, because tonight we're going to talk Turkey, if we may. We need to just recognize that teachers' unions are killing our kids' chances of a better life in this country. I'll repeat that. Teachers' unions are responsible for killing our kids' chances for a better life. You would be forgiven if you gag when you hear one of the luminaries of the left say that this teacher strike is all about the kids. All about the kids. Well, here's what the kids are getting right now. More than half of them, more than half, 52% of them, 52% of Chicago's fourth graders are below basic levels of reading. Below. Now, you could understand why teachers would want to have a raise because they're doing that well with those kids. More than a third, 36%, are below basic. Below. 32%. In math. 40% drop out before they graduate. 40% drop out. And just six out of every 100 students in Chicago obtain four-year college degrees. 6 out of 100. What are Chicago taxpayers paying for? What are they getting out of those, as they describe themselves, disrespected teachers? Well, here's one thing the teachers are getting that doesn't seem to be getting a lot of focus. 71 cents out of every education dollar going into public education in the state of Illinois goes to teacher retirement costs. Teachers are asking, well, they've asked for a 35% raise, they're asking for a 26% raise, when they already make an average annual salary of $76,000, one of the highest pay levels in the country. The people in Chicago don't have much of a voice, but let's take a look at who's really in control and why. We turn to the money. Chicago gets 39% of its funding. Now, you were listening to Rahm Emanuel there. He's in charge of the funding, right? 39% of the money comes from local sources, property taxes, fees paid by Chicago residents. 39%. 27% of their budget comes from state taxpayers. 27%, getting perilously close to what the local taxpayers are paying. And you got to run a budget, right? 17% of their money right now in Chicago, that's right, I said 17%. 17% of their money comes from the federal government in Chicago. In dollar terms, the federal government has provided Chicago schools with more than $4 billion over 4 years. That's more, are you ready? That's more than alone $10,000 in that period per student. $10,000. That's why it makes some people furious when they hear that teachers are more preoccupied with political correctness than the kids they're supposed to be serving. By the way, when you add this up, this leaves another 17% because they have to balance their budgets in Chicago, in case you're wondering about this. 17%, they just go out and borrow. This past year, $440 $400 million spent to pay the debt that they already owe, plus another $400 million in bonds because they couldn't balance their budget. You see the game being played in Chicago and other school districts all across the country. Did you know, for example, when we talk about political correctness, that Portland public school teachers are undergoing equity training this week? Equity training. So that teachers can do better with math and with, no, not science. So they can better understand their own, quote, white privilege. I'm not making this up, obviously. One teacher reportedly mentioned a peanut butter sandwich in a lesson last year. The principal, this principal, highly sensitized and enlightened, of course, took issue with that, saying, quote, what about Somali or Hispanic students who might not eat sandwiches? Do you know, there are those moments in this country in which suggesting that a Hispanic kid, for example, only eats tacos would be considered rather offensive for you folks there in Portland in education and educational administration. To suggest that a Somali doesn't eat a sandwich. I mean, this is where we're going, folks. We can't get a kid out of school, 40% of them dropping out. Nationwide, it's almost 50% for minorities. In Georgia, high school students had to fight an out-of-state atheist group to keep their pregame prayers during football season. And in New York City, a principal here actually banned kindergarten students from singing God Bless the USA because he was concerned it might offend non-believers. The most offensive thing about public education in this country right now is what we're permitting to be done to our kids. There seems to be no shame in Chicago. Let's hope the rest of the country finds a sense of the future that assures this country's destiny, getting a public education.